Um, our third and final speaker is Bella Struminskaya. Bella is an assistant professor of methods and statistics at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. Her research focuses on the design and implementation of online mixed mode and smartphone surveys and passive data collection. Her published research concerns data quality, non-response and measurement error, panel conditioning, device effects, and smartphone sensor measurement. Her talk today, which was previewed or advertised by Peter Luftig, is entitled Seeking Consent to Share Smartphone Sensor Data Among Online Panel Respondents. Bella, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Fred. Hi. Let me quickly find the timer. Hi, everyone. My name is Bella Struminskaya, and as advertised by Peter, I'm talking today on sensors. He has told you a lot already, but maybe a little bit of a deep dive into consent and willingness. I would like to take a brief moment to acknowledge my co-authors of all of these projects that I am presenting on, or just some people who helped make it happen. So sensors are very attractive and apps because nowadays practically every off-the-shelf smartphone has about a dozen of them. And this is a great opportunity for researchers since the data, as Peter has told us, is more rich and more detailed. And of course, also some of the research questions maybe were not feasible before. Also, it could help reduce respondents' burden if we could substitute some questions or just replace them, such as diary studies. But on the other hand, a lot of studies which are done with smartphone sensors and apps come from volunteers. And here it's basically the selection of these studies is by no way representative. That's a drop in the ocean, if you will, that I just came up with. And they focus on volunteers, but sometimes they want to make inferences about the larger population, about the general population, such as some of the studies here, not just to specific groups, as Peter was saying during his talk. So it is important to understand who actually wants to share this data and who does share them. And as the studies which Peter has talked about by Statistics Netherlands, but also other studies such as the IAB SMART by Frauke Kreuter and her colleagues, or the Understanding Society by Annette Jekle and her colleagues. They use this designed big data approach where the starting point is the population registry. Well, in the Netherlands, the population registry, but in other countries, a sampling frame. And then drawing a sample, recruiting respondents, and then some of them participate, some of them don't. So basically, this can also be done in probability-based panels. And I will focus on this particular step of non-participation. The rates, this is a lot of text here. So the point to this slide is that the rates are very varied. So they vary by sensor, by country, also whether people have to download an app, and general span is about from 5 to 57%. So the question is, what are the mechanisms of willingness to share such data and sharing the app and sensor data, so that then we could actually maybe influence some of it to increase the sharing rates, which are not that high. And I would like to focus on the 3 studies which are either published or are coming up in POQ. The third one in the special issue edited by guest issue edited by Fred Conrad and Florian Keusch and Michael Schobar, which is coming out shortly. So we, in all these studies, what we did, we investigated willingness to share, and then this last one, willingness to share and actual participation in the app study. sorry, not the app study, the sensor study. In Germany, this was a non-probability based panel. And the data was collected in 2 ways, but willingness to participate only in one. In the Netherlands, the list panel, so we collected data in 2 ways and asked repeatedly for willingness to participate. And the third one, the CBS one, was the cross section, but you see an asterisk there. So these were people who previously took part in surveys by Statistics Netherlands. So what were they asked to do? To download a tracking app in a German study, and then to share GPS location, photos, and videos in the Dutch studies. The first two, the Koish et al. And Struminskaya et al. 2021, they focused on the hypothetical willingness. So basically, no actual measurements were taken. But the third one also asked respondents to take those measurements. And all of these studies used vignettes with random assignment to those conditions. So varied the sponsor, university, market research, or official statistics, said whether respondent could control the data being collected or not. Then some of the features were also varied, such as duration, topic, and incentives in the German study, and then also asking questions in the app. And in the Dutch studies, the benefit framing, you could save time if you share your data, and confidentiality assurance. So the data would be treated confidentially, no third parties will have access and so forth. The first two studies had a randomized order of tasks. The last study has a fixed order. And then there were a number of covariates such as privacy, concern, technological skills, and so forth. So there is considerable variation here, but there are also mechanisms which are overlapping, and I will focus on them. So first, descriptives, what are the sharing rates? About 35% agreed to download an app, and there the willingness was continuous, on a continuous scale, but we dichotomized it because a lot of people were either saying, yes, I will download it, or no, I will not download it at all. The rates for the Dutch studies varied also considerably, and you can see them here. So for GPS, around 30% in the hypothetical, 45% actually shared it. And then for the photos, so actual sharing was all below 20%. The hypothetical was somewhat higher for some of the sensor measurements. So what about the mechanisms? In the Koish et al. Study, first of all, the university as a sponsor evoked a significantly higher willingness, but the government sponsor a significantly lower one compared to the market research agency. And this was the market research panel. The order of request of vignettes had a significant effect as well. So the further the vignettes, so the first one had the highest willingness. The control, whether a person could switch off the sensor or not, also higher willingness. And then the other factors, the study, which was shorter and is providing incentives, significantly produced significantly higher willingness. What about the Dutch studies? So first of all, mimicking the German study, the order was significant, asking first. So this is a takeaway. If you want to ask for several sensor measurements and one of them is very important to you, you should place it first. The university sponsor also mimics the German study, was high willingness. These are the average marginal effects, so about 9 percentage points higher. The benefit framing actually produced a lower willingness to perform these tasks. And the other conditions, autonomy over data collection and privacy assurance, were not significant. What about the second study? So for both willingness to share GPS and for sharing GPS, the autonomy over data collection increased the willingness. And but for sharing photos and videos, this was not a significant effect besides the photo of receipt. So we see a lot of null effects here. And this is, I also should mention that those who said they were willing to share photos and videos actually all did share them. So 100% of respondents who said, I'm willing to share the photo or the video, did so. In all three studies, there were significant effects of smartphone use behaviors. The more people engaged with their smartphones, the more willing they were, or the more they shared, but mixed findings about the effect of privacy concerns, about attitudes towards surveys, and prior app download. So what is the takeaway message from all that? So first of all, the decisions about sharing seem to be very situation specific and nuanced. And the nature of the task seems to be more relevant than the sensor itself. So basically, taking a selfie is very different from taking a photo of the house. What seems to be key is the clear communication of who asks to share and for what purpose. So this is in line with the framework of privacy in context or contextual integrity by Helen Nissenbaum. And we've heard that from Sebastian earlier. So people want to know who has access to the data and how it will be used. Also, researchers need to strike a balance between maximizing the sharing, but also providing information about the data. So what we did is we visualized the location prior to sharing, and then saw that there was a drop of people who actually shared their location compared to those who were willing to. And there was no such drop in photos and video. So this is a design decision that people can make, panels can make, and it can have negative effects on sharing. And possibly there are also ceiling effects due to loyalty or trust in the sponsor, because we've seen in those studies we manipulated the sponsor, we've seen that the university or more trustworthy sponsor, market research in a market research study, had higher willingness rates. So that's why we probably didn't see the benefits framing effects. But for panels, that's an advantage. And I'm going to stop here because I'm out of time, but looking forward to your questions. And here are also the references to those studies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bella. Actually, I don't think the references are visible. Just your
under my
on your okay, got it. Yeah, thank you so much. There are a couple of questions in the chat. Why don't we turn to them right away? Can you say something about if respondents will react to actual survey requests in the same way that they react to vignette survey requests?
So from what we can see is that the actual request is, there's an interesting thing, which is 100%, so I have only willingness here, but for all of the sensor tasks beyond GPS, the actual willingness, the actual participation overlapped with the willingness. So basically, for the actual sharing, first of all, the rates were lower for those which we can compare. So for photo of the house or video of surroundings, photo of self, all of these were lower. And then basically when the people saw, okay, they're serious, they're asking me now to provide my location, they're asking me now to take a photo, then this kind of thing, it didn't really matter, like they didn't differ. That's my explanation of it. But this is also a design decision that we took to make this consequent, what do you call it? Yeah. So consecutively, sorry. So maybe if you only have one request, this is not going to be a problem.
Okay, thanks. What kind of methodological results of your research supplement an economic science capable of ensuring the innovative development of the national economy of the country?
I'm not sure I understand this this question. So
yeah, maybe the questioner can turn on her microphone and explain what the question means. Alessia, do you want to
sharing,
clarify?
for example,
Yes.
scanning receipts or?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just waiting for your answer, please.
Yes, I'm not sure I understand the question. So if I understand it correctly, for example, sharing financial records, given access to online banking account or scanning receipts, this is something which economic science could profit from using sensors and apps. Well, Fred and I disagree whether whether camera is a sensor, but in this context, taking pictures. I don't know if this answers your questions, Alessia.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bella. While we're waiting for additional questions in the chat, I wonder if you can, you and I have talked about this, but I wonder if you can say a little more about how the nature of the sensor task affects hypothetical or actual willingness to share. I mean, you said something about taking a selfie versus a picture of your home. Is there a larger taxonomy of sensor tasks or sensor data that sort of for which sharing differs systematically?
Yes, so we've talked about this, but others haven't heard our conversation. So basically, what I would say that there is a continuum of control that the participant has over providing data. So taking a picture, the picture is instantly visible, and then that's a different decision process than, for example, sharing accelerometry data or sharing GPS data. So here in our study, we decided to visualize it to kind of like provide feedback, instant feedback on the location, right? And this is something which you don't have to do. So when this affects, when the pictures, for example, or also microphones. So basically, if one were to record, then people do know what they're saying, so they can influence. So in this sense, we are not solving the reactivity problem in a sense. So I think this distinction is important. So whether people understand what they can share, also maybe location is more understandable than the accelerometry. No one in their right mind without any additional analysis could understand what the accelerometry data are.
Sorry, another question in the chat. We did research on willingness to share economic information in Germany, and the willingness was much lower than for instance, the GPS data. So is this consistent? I'll turn it into a question. Is this consistent with your findings?
Well, we didn't ask about economic information. So as Peter said, we have in the pipeline, we have studies such as household budget survey, where people take pictures of their receipts and provide information by typing it. So we could extend it and then maybe ask for sharing, banking account information. But I know from UK studies that it was kind of low. I don't know, Annette was here. Maybe she could correct me on this if I'm wrong. But also this, so Henning is referring to a study where I think GPS data, this was a hypothetical willingness, right? So if people are confronted with their smartphone and they have to actually, type in their account number, I could imagine that this be a concern. And Florian Koch and myself, we do we do some research on privacy concerns and sharing data, and the banking records were actually amongst most private as Dutch population sees it.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left, so I would say if there are any, and there's one question for Matthias, but if there are any questions for any of the authors, this would be a good time to enter them into the chat. So, but let me read the question that came in earlier, but after we were out of time, for Matthias. And again, we may need Alicia to elaborate on what exactly she meant. Please denote, from your point of view, the intrinsical and systemic tenets and lemmatic dependabilities of coding text answers to open-ended questions based on categorical predictors of the statistical learning algorithms. So I don't know if you want to take a stab at that, Matthias, or if we want.
I'll take a stab, and if I'm answering the wrong question, then maybe I can get corrected.
Okay.
So lemma is similar to stemming. A lemma is the actual root of a word, whereas stemming is just you're chopping off the ending and you're hoping to get the root, but you may not. So my guess is the question is asking as to what the variability is when I encode these words into categorical variables, because I'm making, in some sense, somewhat arbitrary choices in the details. And so we did not focus on that here. I mean, one general answer is that I'm separating out training and test data. And so as long as I stay on my training data and then test on my test data, then I'm not cheating. So I can sort of do what I want. I'm just trying to maximize the accuracy of the model. So I don't know what the exact variability would be. Based on sort of general experience, there's some, but not a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone who hasn't had a chance to ask yet, or who wants to ask a second one? We have a minute or so left, 2 minutes left. Okay, well, in that case, my thanks to all three presenters. It's a great session. And I'll turn it back to you, Tara.